Hey, welcome back to Bums in the Bleachers. We are back. We're here to recap week one of the start of the Cubs season and just MLB's first week in general. This is the actual opening day week that we're celebrating, right? Not the Tokyo series, but my name's John, Dram Daddy over here on IG and X, alongside Mike Prasnowski, Prasmaster over on X and Bums in the Bleacher. He runs our page there too on X/Twitter,
Absolutely. Yep.
whatever you want to call it.
Good to be back. Yeah, those I'm glad that at least, regardless of the results of those games, Shane, come on, man. No. The calendar's going to flip to April and everything's going to regulate for you guys. All right, relax there.
Hey, they already got one more win than they did last season, right? The White Sox are they already better than last year? I would say.
I yeah. Um, I'll say this for at least in spite of what the results have been for the Cubs so far this year, it's nice that to finally have baseball back at a time that you don't have to wake up at the ass crack of dawn for, like we did with the first two games in in Tokyo against the Dodgers. Because
Yeah,
I just pulled an all nighter that night, not being sure that I would be able to wake up for those games. So, yeah, that was a very unique start to the season for sure. But
yeah. So now we don't have to get up at 5 in the morning to watch baseball, but we do have to stay up past midnight to watch it. So with
correct,
all these
yeah.
West Coast games that are starting the season over in Arizona and wherever the A's are playing these days, some little league ballpark or something like that, somewhere in Sacramento. Is that
So,
what it is?
Sutter Health Park, and I believe it's West Sacramento, California, not even real
Mhm.
Sacramento, California.
Yeah,
But Shane, I know you're fucking with us. I
I
appreciate
know.
the support and good to see you on Thursday, buddy.
Yeah, love Shane. But yeah, I mean, it was it definitely was an interesting week to start off. There was definitely a little bit of a roller coaster ride that we got to see from the Chicago Cubs. It started off pretty strong on opening day against Arizona with a 10-6 win, and then took a couple curves. There was a bad game from Jamison Tyon that we'll talk about. He looked pretty rough. I think Justin Steele looked. It's two starts to start the year now that he's looked a little rougher on the edges. So, yeah, I mean, let's start off there because I know there were the two games in LA. I'm sorry, in Tokyo against LA.
Yes.
That started off the season, and again, you're going against the big payroll, right? Big bank, little bank.
The new
Um,
evil empire at this point.
yeah, which honestly, I don't know about you, but I'm not even mad at them. I'm not even
No,
mad at
no, I
LA for
can't
doing
be.
what they're doing.
No, you can't be. As we've said many times on the show, they're the exact team that we wish the Cubs were at this point.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I mean, the two games that were in Tokyo. Any thoughts from those games? I mean, that's so hard. I think it's so hard to grade those games because you're going, the time difference. I mean, you're basically playing the next day.
The thing that I was thinking in the games in Tokyo were so far this year, those have probably been the two worst offensive performances for the Cubs. And I do wonder, did you happen to catch any of the games that they played against the two Japanese teams, the two preseason games before at
I
all? Or
saw. I didn't see the first game. I saw. What was it? The second game that they won.
yeah, the second game they won it. I do wonder during that same time period, because the balls that they were using in those games that the Cubs were hitting against, that the Japanese teams were throwing, were the Japanese league balls.
Mhm.
And they struggled in that first game. They wound up scoring 4 runs in the second game of that series. And I do wonder if them making the adjustment to the balls in that second game kind of affected how they did when they returned to a regular size ball against the Dodgers. Obviously, having to face the Dodgers pitching doesn't exactly help either, with the two big guns at the front in Roki and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Um, but they it was a game that they felt a little I don't know. It, just something was off with them in those two games in Japan. you got a pretty good start out of Shota Imanaga in that game, although he
Yep.
walked a couple guys, didn't go for, I think he only went, 4 innings.
Yeah.
Kind of went to the bullpen probably a little bit earlier than you expected to go to. And, it was kind of a recipe for disaster from that point on for the rest of that series in Japan, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, it's hard to judge those two games because I mean, one, you're playing in Japan, you're playing in Tokyo. You're playing against the Dodgers, who, without question, have the best roster in baseball, at least on paper, right?
Yeah.
So to your point, the evil empire, right? The new evil empire. So you're going up against that. And then, I think so I'm going to chalk up those two games to basically they are what they are, right? You lost to a really great team, the team that's the projected favorite to win the World Series again this year. So that's fine, whatever. I thought what I was really impressed is how they came back and, they played that first game in Arizona and they won that game of a score of 10-6.
Yep.
And that was, to me, I thought that was a really impressive one, considering like just the way that the spring training, and then the Tokyo series kind of laid out, because it was really weird. I mean, obviously it's such a weird thing to do is have spring training, start your regular season in the middle of spring training, and then go back and finish
to spring training. Right. Yeah.
And finish another week of that before you have to take a long trip to the West Coast. Right. Well, I mean, they're already in Arizona, I guess, but
right.
So,
exactly.
I mean,
they got it off to a comfortable start once the domestic season started, but the point is valid. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was, like I said, it was a solid game. They put up 10 runs. We got to see, obviously Justin Steele, struggled quite a bit again for the second start in a row, but we did get to see some offense from Ian Happ. Had a really nice game and start to the season. Yep. We got to see a little bit of Dansby Swanson. I know King Tuck got his first RBI of the season.
Yep.
Any other thoughts from this game? Because I mean, I honestly, it was great to see him put up 10 runs to start the year.
I guess, I mean, this is probably not sustainable at all, but Miguel Amaya also off to a hot start too, had the lone RBI in game 1 of the Tokyo series. At one point had like 6 RBI through the first 3 games. So, good job by Miguel Amaya right there.
Yesterday was the first hit he got that was not a double this season.
Wow. Okay. Pretty impressive for him for a guy who I actually had a little bit of doubt about going into this year, but season is obviously very, very still young, so he could always regress back to where he was. But I do think that the mechanical change he made last year by taking the leg kick out of his swing, he improved a ton from that point until the end of the season, and it's showing so far this season. So,
well, I think he was definitely a question mark that we talked about too, right? Like, is Miguel Amaya going to be what he was in the second half of the season, or was he going to be what he was in the first half of the season? So I think it's nice to see this start and see him come out of the gate. It's obviously with a ton of extra base hits. Like, I mean, he's hitting the ball hard. He's hitting for power. If your catcher is a double machine, I feel a lot better about the lineup for the rest of the year. If your guys like, 6, 7, 8, 9, if those guys are actually hitting like that, the way that, Amaya's been hitting to start the season, I think the offense could be a lot better than I think what we projected, because I think that's a big thing that we were worried about, right? Was the offense, is how much better did the offense really get in the offseason? Because, they obviously switched out, Cody Bellinger for Kyle Tucker.
Right.
And we're going to talk about, Matt Shaw a bit too, right? And he obviously took over for Paredes and Christopher Morel, and they're hoping that that's an upgrade. Hasn't been the best start to the season thus far, but again, it's a rookie at third base. So I think there's a lot more questions than answers when it comes to this offense, but I think Miguel Amaya was definitely a bright spot, coming out of this weekend.
For sure. Hey, Matt Shaw, you look at his overall numbers right now, well, not all that great, but did get his first home run on the Saturday game, I believe.
Yep.
Because that gave him some insurance.
This game was a dud.
Yeah, that game was, I mean, scored first, but after 2 innings, it was pretty much dead on arrival at that point.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Imanaga comes back.
Imanaga, man, really strong in this game. 7 shutout innings, or 7 innings of 1-run ball, I should say. Like, he looked exactly like the Imanaga we saw last year.
Which, again, another question mark for us, I think, is Imanaga really going to, be able to produce in his sophomore year the way he did in his rookie year? Really, in my opinion, I thought that Imanaga probably should have been a lot closer to winning Rookie of the Year than he was.
Right.
To Paul Skeens, because I think he pitched the entire year, where Skeens came in.
That's true.
But a few months later.
Not a real rookie at that point, though, because he had all the years in Japan. But I see what you're saying.
But he is a rookie, though. He was a rookie last year. I mean,
was
to
a
MLB
rookie
standards. So
was a rookie. I don't think there was a world where he was going to win it because it was a really strong
Paul
rookie
Skeens.
class. Well, Paul Skeens, but you also had Jackson Merrill, Jackson Churio.
That's true. Yeah.
So there were a lot of worthy candidates in last year's rookie class.
Yeah. So we've had, we saw this game with Imanaga, like you said, 7 strong innings. We got to see Kyle Tucker hit his first home run.
Yeah, that was
as a
beautiful.
Cub, which was a bomb. And then we got to see Matt Shaw hit his first home run as a Chicago Cub and a major leaguer.
Yes. That and it was insurance at the time. It wound up being very important as Ryan Presley would record his first save as a Cub, but not doing it in the most easy way possible.
Yeah, and again, we'll spend some time on that because I know we were kind of texting yesterday, and I obviously have some thoughts here.
For sure.
Which leads us into the last game of the series, right? The 10-6 loss here.
Do we have to talk about this one?
I want to point out this 8th inning where they completely imploded. And again, we're going to spend some time talking about the bullpen. I definitely, I think we talked about it in previous casts. We thought that they addressed a lot of it. I think there were still some concerns that I had after, just considering that I didn't think that they did enough. I thought what they did was good and better. Like, they actually did put some investment, but there's definitely a point I want to make here that, I know I texted you over the weekend about too. But yeah, I mean, before we jump into that, I want to get your thoughts on Matt Shaw so far. Want to get your opinion. What do you think so far? Do you think this, and the reason why I asked this is because we saw Cam Smith make the Houston Astros opening day roster.
Right.
He had a huge spring training playing third base. I know they moved him out to the outfield to basically replace Kyle Tucker's spot because they have Paredes playing third there. How are you judging this? Are you judging the Kyle Tucker production versus Cam Smith, or are you judging the Matt Shaw production versus Cam Smith? Because essentially you basically had a block at third. You're either sticking with Matt Shaw or you're sticking with Cam Smith, right? Either one of those should have been your third baseman, unless they theoretically were ready to move on past Nico. And then
I was going to say maybe if they had stuck with Cam Smith, what they could have done was had Matt Shaw come up, because he was further along in his development, have him play third this year, see where Cam Smith fits defensively in the minors. Well, he would still be there, assuming he'd still be in the minors in the Cubs organization. And, go from there. You maybe move on from Nico. You maybe move on from, say, a Michael Busch and put one of them first or something like that. Although I think the answer would be obvious there. You'd probably put Cam Smith at first because Shaw is a lot shorter. But, as far as Matt Shaw goes, I mean, looked pretty damn good in this Arizona series, 0-for-4 on the Friday game, but hits in every one of them else. The home run on Saturday night, it's not going to, not every rookie is going to come up and immediately light the world on fire previous core of prospects did for the Cubs. But so far so good. I guess if I could nitpick one thing is that I feel like defensively at third base, he's kind of rushing things a little bit. He needs to maybe like have a better internal clock in his defense and realize like he doesn't have to rush every throw to first. He doesn't have to get to the ball before he's like well positioned to field it. But I mean that will come with time. Like he has the tools to like actually develop into a good third baseman. So I'm taking I like what I've seen so far. And as far as your question about, am I judging Shaw versus Smith? Am I judging Tucker versus Smith? I guess you'd probably say like a little bit of both, really. Like it opened up a I don't know the right way to say this because it would go back against what I just said, but like there was no you can't put both of them at third, obviously.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so Matt Shaw, so far so good in my opinion.
I think, it's just an interesting, thing to kind of talk about, or interesting topic, because I mean, right now, as it stands, you traded away Cam Smith for a year of Kyle Tucker,
Right.
because we don't know if there's going to be any extension that's given. We obviously know that they're not going to be able to work it out now. And Scott Boras agents, Scott Boras players, I should say, typically go to free agent. They don't sign extensions. So I think we kind of knew that was the real possibility here, that, Kyle Tucker wouldn't resign after being traded to the Cubs, and there was no real extension. From what we know, there are no real talks that really kind of occurred. And again, Cam Smith is a prospect, right? Like we know that it could go either way. I mean, I think it's just concerning. I think when you watch a guy like that, who's really kind of like elevated above the ranks pretty quickly. I mean, and he was a college player too. So, I mean, he obviously wasn't going to have that long of a
right.
journey to the majors, but I mean, he's transcended pretty quickly. Right. And I think he looked really, I mean, he was lighting the ball on fire in spring training for Houston, which was
for sure
more than what we saw from Matt Shaw, I think, in spring training.
That's true. Yeah. I would have imagined that if Cam Smith was still in the Cubs organization right now, he'd probably be like on the same trajectory as Shaw. Start this year in Double-A Tennessee.
Yep.
Maybe get to Iowa, maybe get called up in September. I wonder with the Astros, like, are they doing this out of desperation, or do they really think he's major league ready at this point?
I think that he earned it. I think he honestly had that strong enough of a spring, and they found a place for him, in the outfield to really, they need to basically duplicate Kyle Tucker's power numbers from multiple positions, so I think that they're trying to squeeze it out of, Cam Smith and Paredes combined. But it's interesting. I mean,
we're talking about a guy who last season he actually did make it to Double-A Tennessee. I didn't realize that
he did. Really quickly.
Granted, he only played 5 games there.
Yeah, but he only needed 30 games in Single A to get there.
Yeah,
I think it was like 34 games or something like that in Single A, and then he
for a college player to reach Double-A in his first pro season, like it's not common, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. I just don't think that like having a handful of games in Double-A like automatically makes you ready for the major leagues if you have a hot spring. But we'll see how it all shakes out for them.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not too concerned with Matt Shaw right now. It's week 1. It's 4 games into the season, or 6 games really, I should say.
Yeah.
But 4 games, from Thursday at this point, in America, and
right.
I'm not super concerned yet, but I think I think they put themselves in a very precarious spot because they are entrusting a rookie to play third base and produce right away. Because I mean, their lineup isn't currently constructed with a lot of power bats, and they are going to have to rely on a lot of guys that, on either duplicating what they did in the second half of the year or improving on that, right? Like I think there's a lot of weight, and like we said, Miguel Amaya, is he first half or second half? Same with PCA, is he first half or second half PCA? And they're hoping that these guys can really grow into their own after the second half of the year that we kind of saw from those two specifically. But I do think that there's a lot of pressure on Matt Shaw to produce right away too, because I think that lineup, like I said, isn't really.
Yeah.
I look at after Kyle Tucker, there's not a lot of protection for the guy after that. Like Seiya, again, I worry about Seiya's health. Like, how long is he going to be in the lineup before he goes out with another oblique strain? Because I think that's happened every year he's been in the majors here.
I think it's less likely now that he's not playing the field anymore. But you make a valid point.
I don't know if the playing the field made a difference or not. I think I don't know if it's a swing or a mechanics thing, like the way, how hard he swings or whatever the case is. But I mean, he has gone out every year with an oblique injury, I want to say, since he's been here in Chicago. So I think it's a matter of time before that happens. And if he goes down, and I don't know if you heard it, but Jed Hoyer had some really interesting comments, over the weekend or last weekend, where he basically said before the season started, like, this team's current construction really can't afford injuries the way that a lot of other ball clubs can afford it, right? Like they're not built for, having a guy or two go down to injuries, and they also need guys to outproduce their projections for them to have the year that they want to have. So I think that's where some of the concerns come, where it's like you're putting a lot of pressure on a rookie third baseman that he's got to produce right away in this lineup.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, if you look back at where he was hitting in the Tokyo games, like I think they had him hitting like fifth, which
that was
even as like highly touted as a prospect as Matt Shaw is, that feels like, really throwing him into the fire for his first game there. So yeah, definitely a lot of pressure on him, but I think as the season becomes a little more normalized and like you don't have all the fanfare of Japan or the opening series in Arizona or the opening series in Sacramento tonight or the opening series at Wrigley, once the games start to like feel a little bit normal, I feel like he'll settle in a bit.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that last game, because I think this has been a point of contention for really the better half of a year and a half now. I want to point out, here, I'm going to share my screen here. This is the bullpen's performance after a pretty solid Matt Boyd start. I think they got more from Matt Boyd than I personally expected in the first game. I mean, he went 5 innings of shutout ball, 4 hits. Yeah. I mean, he did walk 3 guys. He had 5 strikeouts, but I mean, he was pretty efficient. And I think he struggled there towards, the 5th inning.
He was kind of running out of gas a little bit at like 5 was the absolute max he was going to go for how many pitches he was throwing. But
for
solid
your 5th starter.
Yeah,
for your 4th or 5th starter, whatever you want to call him. I mean, I don't know where he's going to end up in the rotation at the end of the year, but right now, I guess he technically would be their 4th starter. But pretty solid. I mean, I'd take that 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 times,
I'd take that every time out from Matt Boyd. Yeah, we're mixing up our Matts here. Jesus.
Yeah,
almost said Matt.
And then the implosion began. Starting with the 6th inning, you saw Nate Pearson. He had a couple innings where he put himself in danger pretty early on to start the innings. Started with a couple walks in the last inning that he pitched. 2 walks, no outs to start out the inning, and then Thielbar came in. He limited the damage briefly, and then the next inning he kind of imploded.
For that 7th inning performance by Thielbar, we do got to give him major props, because he had to. I think he came in. It was I forget who hit right before Suarez. It may have been Naylor for the Diamondbacks. Winds up walking him. Has to face Suarez, who had torched the Cubs all series. And, for the better part of his career, going back to his days as a Red, gets Eugenio Suarez to strike out, gets the next guy to ground out. You're thinking, all right, great performance there. Have yourself a seat, and we're happy with the performance he gave us there, and thank you for getting us out of that jam. But then, yeah, they go back right to him in the eighth and kind of pay the price for it.
Yeah, and here's where I mean, obviously, looking at the box score here, you had Thielbar who came in. He had 2 inherited runners, gave up none, which was, like I said, that inning was really strong for him. But then he came back the next inning, gave up a couple walks to start out the inning, got pulled. Eli Morgan came in, really just, I mean, obviously the wheels came off at that point. Colin Ray comes in to basically give up another hit and close out the game, but 8 runs in the was it the 8th inning. The Cubs were up 6-2 at this point. Obviously go down 10-6, don't make any noise in the top of the 9th. Are you hitting the panic button this early in the year? And the reason why I ask this is because this is a team that blew 26 saves last year. This is what basically dug them into the hole that they got into to start off the year, that they had to dig themselves out and try to make that run at the end of the year for a wild card spot, which they couldn't. The 2 years in a row, they dug themselves into holes where they fought their way out, made runs, and ultimately ran out of gas because they were fighting so hard in the dog days of summer to come back from the rough starts that they got into.
Yeah,
they're already 2-4 to start this year, with a couple games where Brian Presley hasn't looked really great to start the year. This game obviously is a huge loss, I think, because they were up 6-2 going into the 8th inning. With a good bullpen, they close out this game. They're instead of 2-4, we're looking at 3-3, and going into a series with Oakland, which they should go in and take care of business. And then you're looking at a team that's over 500, to start off on the road, to begin their year. So, are you panicked yet? Is this something that you're concerned about? Do you think this is fixable? Do you have any concerns with the bullpen, or is this the new year, same old shit?
I would say, okay, new year, maybe not same old bullpen, but like concerning bullpen. I mean, they did make changes. They did the guys you just brought up right there. I mean, it was Eli Morgan and Caleb Thielbar who gave up the runs in the 8th inning there. Those guys were not Cubs last season. And I don't really have all that high hopes for Caleb Thielbar, other than a situation where you bring him in to like try and get a lefty out with like 2 outs and maybe escape and not have to bring him back for the next inning. And then Eli Morgan, he was a solid reliever in Cleveland too. I wonder if it's just kind of a shaky start for them. I would say I'm cautious right now, but I'm not hitting the panic button for a couple reasons. I would say, one, there's a couple guys that are on in some form or another not on the active roster that I think are some of the better relievers on this team. Like Tyson Miller is on the injured list currently. Daniel Palencia, he probably has the best stuff of any relief pitcher in the Cubs organization right now, but he's currently sitting in Iowa. I wonder whose call it was to not have Luke Little as a second lefty in the bullpen, because having him available to start the 8th would have been nice with 2 lefties to start that 8th inning. So I don't know that the Cubs bullpen is exactly at full strength yet. And I would say that, it's obviously not good to not have that, to deal with that sort of scenario, but it's not something that I'm going to hit the panic button on yet. I also do want to point out one thing on, we were talking about Ryan Presley and his performance on Saturday. He was a little bit shaky, and you're someone who's of the belief that, he eventually, as this year goes on, will probably take a lesser role and Porter Hodge will take over as closer for him.
Yep.
That may be the case. I'm personally going to just not worry about what he did in these. Well, what did he pitch in the opener against Arizona too? And then also he got the save in. if you look at what he did last year in Houston, his first 10 appearances back then were pretty shaky as well. And then from May on through the rest of the year, he was like lights out as much as he had ever been in previous years with Houston. So that's one guy that like I'm not gonna like really worry about too much until we get, past about 10 to 15 appearances for him.
Yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily say I'm ready to hit the panic button yet, but I definitely am hitting the beyond frustrated button, and I think we talked about
Exactly.
it a little.
Yes. That's a fantastic way to put it. It's like the same problem over and over and over again that like it feels like no matter what they do, they're not getting it right.
Right. And I think this is where, like, I think, you and I have talked for the last couple of years now, right? This is our second season, doing the Bums and the Bleachers podcast. And I think this has been, we've done, actually, this is the third season, right? We covered the end of 2023.
Middle of 2023. That's right.
Right. And then we did all of 2024. We're starting 2025. So this is about a 2-year into year 3, the same issue. I think the same thing we're talking about. And, I think that like my consistent argument here, my consistent like grievance, I guess you can say, has been how they look to construct a bullpen. Because I think that, if you look back even at my old like tweets, right? Like this is the same like hodgepodge bullpen that Jed Hoyer builds, right? A lot of reclamation projects, a lot of trades of like guys that, maybe are undervalued on other teams, and maybe he's overvaluing a lot of guys that maybe he thinks that we could get into the Cubs pitch lab and, transform into these great like spin rate dudes. Not a lot of overpowering guys. Again, like that's always, me. I want power pitchers in my bullpen, especially towards the end.
Right.
And I think where I'm concerned is you look at, right here, I got Ryan Presley's, season to start here, 1 strikeout to start out the year. Right. And that's not a guy that I really want at the end of my bullpen. Right. And again, I know it's early, and I know you said he had a pretty rough March in Houston last year and then got, to lockdown. And I know that he is also getting older. I think that obviously Houston wanted to be aggressive in building their bullpen. They went out for Josh Hader the year prior, and obviously found him expendable at that point because they added Josh Hader and looked to cut some payroll. But this is where like my grievances with Jed Hoyer and the Cubs, and again, like, I mean, you made a good point. Like how much of that is, him being hamstrung by Ricketts, but
yeah,
again, that's obviously we know that's the larger argument is Tom Ricketts, right? Like how much they're going to spend on this team and how much they're willing to spend and how much they actually care about winning here. But I'm beyond frustrated because to me, this is the same argument that Chicago fans have with the Bears and the Chicago Bears building an offensive line, right? Like in building in the trenches.
It's like the Spider-Man meme. On one side you got the Cubs bullpen, the other side you got the Bears offensive line. Yeah. Yep.
That's exactly what it is. This argument, right? Is like, we know that like when you're constructing a team with football, you're building your team in the trenches, and it's, it's offensive line, it's defensive line. And, I just want to make the similarity here because it's the same thing with baseball. Like we always say, like what wins championships is pitching and defense. They built the defense and then they think they built the pitching the same way that Ryan Poles thought he built the offensive line the first couple of years with the Bears. Right. Went out and made trades for guys, gave away 4th, 5th rounders for backup guards that he wants to play as centers. This feels eerily similar where you're going and you're going out and trading for a setup guy in Ryan Presley to be your closer. And already you're getting, a couple games in, bad production and 1 strikeout.
Yeah.
And shout out to Kickflips and Threads, man, for the for the headgear.
Looking hat. I got to get my hands on one of those. It's a solid looking cap you got on there. You know what? So let me bring up right now. I don't know how to screen share it, but I'm on Ryan Presley's Baseball Reference page. Last season as a whole, pretty good when it comes to strikeouts. 58 strikeouts in 56 and 2/3 innings, so a little over 1 per inning. That is a little bit of on a decline from previous years, because 74 strikeouts in 65 and a third, 65 in 48 and a third the 2 seasons prior, 81 in 64 innings in 2021. Yep. So he's on a slide, but like, that is still probably what he did last season would have made him one of the better relievers in the Cubs bullpen at that point. Let me just see here what he did as far as strikeouts go through his first 10 appearances last year. Go ahead.
2023, yeah, I was going to say in 2023, he's got 10.2 strikeouts per 9 innings. And then we saw a decline to 9.2 last year at age 35. He's now age 36. And again, there's only a couple games, so it's not enough, not enough runway to really make an opinion of him in a Cubs uniform. But you can see here from 2022, he actually, his strikeouts per 9 have declined every year. And again, is this going to be the pattern that we see with the Cubs? And again, you traded away, you traded some prospects to basically, get a setup guy to be your closer, because that's where he was. He was a setup guy last year. And this feels a lot.
Technically, yes. However, the guy who they did have closing games in Josh Hader, Presley did have a lower ERA than last year. I just want to throw that out there, that overall did perform better than the guy they had as closer.
Yeah. I just think this feels eerily like I said, like the Chicago Bears, like is Ryan Bates of the Chicago Cubs, trading a 5th rounder, playing a guy out of position, getting poor production. This is definitely a concern of mine. So, I mean, and again, they just haven't built a lot of equity with me personally as a fan to show that they can build an effective bullpen. When's the last time they had an effective bullpen?
I mean, for a competitive team, you got to go back to probably the last core. For like an actual, for any team under Jed, I think they had a pretty good one to start 2022, but that was also like with the motivation of trading a lot of those guys at the deadline. Yeah, you got to go back a little bit. I guess, this will probably go into our next topic a little bit, but, I think the bigger factor in, them blowing the game yesterday that they did is, if you look at how the 8th inning started for them, it was 2 lefties coming up to hit for Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
So I can kind of see why Craig chose to stick with Caleb Thielbar in that spot after he had already faced 3 batters, he did already face 3 batters the previous inning. So they could have pulled him at any point.
He could have. Kept him in there though.
Well, kept him in there to face the 2 lefties that were there at first. And the unfortunate thing is, like, probably would have been a lot less damage if he had just thrown it down the middle. And like, if they hit it as far as they do, that's still, probably that's nobody on base after you pull them. So, it's a decision that I think is going to get very scrutinized. But he's working with the resources that he has right now. There is no Mark Leiter on this team that, is a righty that can get lefties out. There's no, other than Thielbar, that's your lefty as of right now, unless, they call up Luke Little. But I want to say he only pitched in like 1 game all of spring training. So I don't know exactly what's up with him, but that's another area of concern, is that, like, I have been the one that has been really pounding the table hard for them to go and get a solid lefty. And, so far,
power lefty.
I mean, maybe Caleb Thielbar settles down and becomes that, but not a good start so far for him.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because, we've watched now a full year of Craig Counsell. We've watched a week into, 2025 season. It felt like yesterday was a gross mismanagement of the bullpen. do you think Craig Counsell's overrated? Do you think, like, because we were sold on this, we're paying the guy, the Cubs are paying the guy $8 million a year to be this massive improvement on David Ross and be able to be this guru of the bullpen and, fitting the pieces and knowing when to pull guys, when to leave guys out. And, he's supposed to be this mastermind of like working, he was known for, working a great bullpen with guys that maybe weren't household names, in Milwaukee. Right. So,
Yeah.
We haven't seen it thus far in 2024, and we're not seeing in 2025 to start the year. So do you think, and then we saw Milwaukee's success without Craig Counsell last year. They won the division without him. Do you think he's overrated?
I'd have to say like it's an incomplete answer at this point.
Okay.
And we can rewind the tape back to the end of 2023 when I made my grand bold prediction on this show saying like, I hope that, the Cubs wind up firing David Ross and signing Craig Counsell when his contract was up. I could not have been more over the moon when that happened. He has made a lot of moves that I've disagreed with that I didn't think I would disagree with.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of how often he doesn't, like, late in games, doesn't start an inning with a fresh reliever or will, not go to the bullpen until, whatever previous pitcher, starter or previous reliever gets into a jam. That he does like it he doesn't really make the optimal pitching move that, we were all kind of led to believe that he did make in Milwaukee. And maybe he did make those moves in Milwaukee. He maybe just had a stronger bullpen up there. I will say that one part about him that I am a fan of is that, he probably is handling the young players on the Cubs a hell of a lot better than if David Ross were still managing or, pick whichever, manager is out there. I mean, let me ask you this. If Craig Counsell wasn't the manager of the Cubs right now, would you really want David Ross to still be managing them?
No, I don't think so. But I do think that there is, I think there's a couple parts to the discussion that needs to be had. Like, one, if Craig Counsell was as great as they sold us on, right? Or like anybody had sold, everyone was by all intents and purposes saying that this is one of the best managers in all of baseball. And I don't think that we've necessarily seen the great managing prowess of Craig Counsell to start, his tenure with the Cubs already. Because again, I don't think there's been a ton of moves where I've really looked at it and said, like, wow, that was great managing of the game. You know what I mean? So, I think, that has been definitely a concern. I don't know if I would necessarily go as far to say he's overrated just yet. Or is this an issue because, to your point, is he just dealing with the best with what, he's doing the best with
Exactly.
what he's got, right?
Which he's doing the best with what he's got in my opinion, which, like, again, at times it's not the move that I personally would choose to make. But, as we've stressed a lot, like, having another lefty reliever, especially one that, is elite, that would have been out there for you if you could have gotten a Tanner Scott or, in the previous offseason, a Josh Hader, who he had the connection with in Milwaukee. That would go a long way. And it would have went a long way in yesterday's game if you could have brought him in the 8th inning instead of sticking with Caleb Thielbar for another inning. So, that's, to me, it's more of a resource problem than it is a Craig problem at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, and I think there's a couple things that I still haven't really loved. And again, I know you're playing matchups and you're doing all these things too, but when I even just look at the lineup, and the lineup card over the last couple games, you sat Miguel Amaya on Saturday after he's basically been a double machine, and you play Carson Kelly instead. I thought that was an interesting move.
You can't play Miguel Amaya every day. You get
no, you can't. But it's also the first week. you know, and I think like you play the hot bat, right? And you think Miguel Amaya, by all intents and purposes, has been your best offensive player to start this, this season outside of the Tokyo series, right? Since Thursday, I mean, he's been your best offensive player. And also he's batted him ninth. He batted him ninth yesterday again, which you bat Justin Tucker fourth after not playing at all.
Yeah, okay.
That
is a very questionable move for sure.
So I didn't really love that. And again, it's, who am I to? I'm not an analytics guy. I'm not the guy who's, in the Cubs department crunching numbers and telling you how to create the lineup, according to who you're facing. But it just felt very suspicious that you sit Miguel Amaya on Saturday and then you bring him back to back ninth, and you have Justin Tucker batting fourth. So that's where I'm kind of like, yes, maybe. I think part of it is roster construction, but part of it, I'm kind of like, what are we doing? What are we doing here?
Well, it was either eighth or ninth that Amaya mostly hit last season, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if this hot of a start really is something that, a hot 6 games is something that's going to warrant him hitting higher in the lineup. He could easily fall back down to earth, but I do believe he should be rewarded for that. And yeah, like you said, if you're going to have a lineup that features Justin Turner starting in it, it's one that, a guy who has hit well in the first few games of the series should be rewarded with a little bit higher of a slot than, someone who is just kind of be a part-time player for you this year. So yeah, I get what you're saying there.
Well, I do think one good thing that we saw out of the weekend, we saw Dansby Swanson have a pretty solid series. I mean, he had a couple games where he went over, but he did have a really nice game yesterday. He had a pretty good game on.
That home run he hit yesterday was. Do you remember in like one of the early games in 2016? It may have even been the game where like Schwarber tore his leg up in Arizona, conveniently enough. Jake Arrieta hit a home run, like basically right in that same spot that Dansby hit it to. He hit it to yesterday. He's off to a hell of a start, and it's encouraging for a guy who maybe has been a little bit underwhelming at the plate. What you get from him defensively, and he's still really elite at shortstop. And even with his over performance on Saturday night, made the play of that game to win it for the Cubs by getting Garrett Hampson hung up at third over there. So, good start so far for Dansby. Love to see that.
Yeah, I mean that defensive play that happened over the weekend was one of the most heads up play. I mean, there was a lot of good defensive plays that I think I saw throughout the weekend, which were very promising. I think we saw, PCA made that incredible throw from, basically deep right center to third, gunned out a guy at third base, which was, man, I love to see that from PCA. I mean, that guy is so exciting. He's so much fun to watch. But Dansby's heads up play on what was it? Was it Saturday? The 4-3
Saturday
game,
night.
Right? Saturday.
Yep.
That heads up play of catching the runner, basically trying to get home on a ground out to first. Dansby knew that he didn't have a play at second or first, caught the guy rounding third, and was able to track him all the way back to third and tag him to end the game. I mean, that was it was a really cool ending to a game, really exciting. But he's definitely looked a lot healthier. We know that he was he was playing all of last year, fighting injury. He had, I want to say he had surgery in the offseason, right?
He did. That's right.
Yeah.
And I remember too, like I randomly, I don't really listen to much sports talk radio these days, and that'll be a topic of conversation we bring up a little bit later in the show too. I remember randomly flipping on the Score one day over the offseason and hearing Lawrence Holmes talk about Dansby getting that surgery. And, I just would hope for his sake that, like, he's at a place in his career where he doesn't feel like he has to keep playing every single day if it's going to cost the Cubs, because, like, he is a guy that, it is someone that we've come to embrace it. Like when we first signed him, or I don't know if you did because we weren't recording at that point, but one thing that I think was talked about a lot is how few games he missed when he was a Brave. Like every year he would be in like the 150s, 160s for games played.
Yeah.
And that as admirable as that is, you can't always just demand your way into the lineup if you're struggling and it's because you're hurt. So I hope he can be honest with Counsell going forward about what may be bothering him at this point in his career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, lastly, I think another, bright spot, and I think we talked about it too. Like, we saw Kyle Tucker really struggle in spring training. I was fine with it. I knew like, hey, if the guy's going to get hot, I'd rather have him get hot at the beginning of the year than in spring training. But we've seen him get off to a pretty good start to start the season. I mean, he's batting 250. We had a couple rough first games to start out the year in Tokyo, but since then, I mean, he's been lighting up the stat sheet here. He's hitting the ball really hard. He had a couple home runs over the weekend. He's got 7 RBIs to start the year. The on base is starting to creep up to 357. So obviously drawing some walks. I mean, he's looking like the superstar that was advertised to us.
Absolutely.
Which has been really exciting to see. Playing solid defense out in right field as well. Putting Say on a DH spot, where I think we both agree is he deserves to be at this point in his Cubs tenure. But yeah, I mean, I think it's been a really great start for Kyle Tucker so far, and it's been really exciting to see. Like, I mean, this guy looks like a legit top 10 player in baseball.
Oh yeah, he is fantastic, and obviously like really come into his own these last 2 games with the bombs and multiple hits. Like he looks so comfortable at the plate, and he may have been a guy that we didn't do many shows during spring training. We only did I think 2, the one with Murphy, but he really struggled through spring training. I think he went like a couple weeks without getting a hit and then finally got a home run for his first hit. And that could have been seen as a cause for concern, especially, as we brought up earlier, right at that same time when he's going on an 0-for in spring training, Cam Smith is lighting up the world in spring training and making the major league roster. And that was just like a recipe for disaster on Cubs Twitter saying, oh, this trade is going to be like friggin', Lou Brock 2.0 as
Peter, I would.
My buddy Peter in the comments texted me a couple days ago, but
there's no chance. I had all the faith that he was going to come back and and have a good season. I mean, he's been consistently a really top 10. He's been a top 10 hitter in baseball consistently for the last few years. So I wasn't necessarily looking at the Cam Smith trade as like not working because of Kyle Tucker. My concern is like you gave up Cam Smith and you're getting 1 year of Kyle Tucker. And I think like watching him play right now and the way that he looks, and if he obviously stays healthy and maintains this the rest of the year, I think it's going to hurt that much more if he walks after this year, because it's been a while since the Cubs have had a legit superstar on their team, right? Like I think I would say I would go as far as 2016.
Would you count Cody's performance in 2023?
No.
He was top 10 in MVP that year.
I thought he had a really nice year and it was a good year, but I never felt at any point like this guy is like a top 10 player in the league, because I think there were a couple bookend years before and after that showed like, what is Cody Bellinger? Was he back to his MVP, performance, which I mean, even that year in 2023, it felt really good considering the years he had come out of, but it was never even like, it wasn't the years that he was up there in MVP voting though. You know what I mean? So it's like, it was a good year, but it was never like, oh my God, this guy's a legit superstar. It just, because I mean, there were a lot of peripherals that I think people were even citing, like the bat on ball average, like the power numbers, or like the exit velocity and things like that felt maybe a little bit down, from his MVP seasons. But I think it's been since I would say Chris Bryant's 2016 MVP year.
You got Javi finishing runner-up in 18 at Yelich.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, I guess that was maybe, but I mean, yeah, I guess I would say that. But I mean, okay, so 2 years removed from Chris Bryant, right? So even if we're going 2018, that's still 7 years since it's felt like the Cubs have had a top 10 player in baseball, right?
Yeah. It's a long damn time to go for a big market franchise, but
Right, exactly.
got one now.
Yep.
Let me just say this on
I hope
Kyle
it's here to
Tucker.
stay.
I hope he's here to stay too.
God.
This is not the only podcast I do. I do a different one also with Andy Dolan, the Pointless Exercise podcast, and we did our official preview show right before the Cubs play the Dodgers in Tokyo for that show. I picked Kyle Tucker to win NL MVP this year. For better or for better or for worse, he's going into his walk year, which means he's incentivized to have the best year possible. And he hasn't had any sort of real discussion with the Cubs about an extension yet. So, go out and ball, dude, and hope you get your payday. Hopefully it's from the Cubs, but hopefully you put together a season here that leads to a big payday for you. And one other note I want to say, we talk a lot about the trade with getting him and then trading away Cody Bellinger a couple days later.
Yeah, for nothing, for cash considerations.
Yeah, and it looks real bad now that Cody Petit was just given away to the Orioles for, I think, even more cash considerations. Yeah.
Well, it's because that those cash considerations got the Cubs to break even now. So they've officially broken even from that trade.
I would love for one beat reporter or some, business reporter or something, next time they sit down and talk to Tom Ricketts, ask him, like, so if Jet wasn't able to get a trade with the Yankees after trading for Kyle Tucker, would you guys be declaring bankruptcy right now? Like, would you guys be in like serious debt right now because you're not breaking even on that? But the one thing I will say about Cody Bellinger too is, maybe we do forget a little bit that like what his contract structure with the Cubs was, because if he were still here, he would have an opt-out. And if he was having, if he had gotten off to the start that Kyle Tucker has so far gotten off to with the Cubs, or that Cody Bellinger has gotten off to in New York so far, and he stayed with that, it's probably unrealistic to think that that would be consistent. Even if he had a year like he did in 2023 for the Cubs, he's more than likely opting out. So either way you slice it, whoever your right fielder is this year probably is not going to be under contract after this season. So just one thing to consider, in my opinion.
Well, I did want to point this out. I'm going to share this. I'm going to share my screen here. Let me pull this up here, because this is what drives me absolutely mad. There we go. Cubs adjusted payroll in 2024 was 232 million.
Right. Which was like just a hair over the luxury tax too, which I'm sure Ricketts was thrilled about.
This year, 192.
Yeah.
They've saved 40 million off their payroll. And to me, it's like, this is the year you need to go after this division. It is the most winnable it's been in the last few years. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's always the fear that Milwaukee can still be Milwaukee, right? Like, they always find a way to fight for this division. St. Louis started out the year 3-0, which I don't think is sustainable. And they look like they're going to regress. I think Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh. Cincinnati is Cincinnati.
And the best player on the Cardinals currently is probably going to get traded at some point this season.
For sure. But I mean, how disturbing is that they've saved, almost $40 million in payroll. And again, it's like, they made this trade for Cody Bellinger, and again, they basically flip-flop Cody for Kyle Tucker, which he is a better player. Don't get me wrong. Kyle Tucker is a better player than Cody Bellinger at this point in their careers. But effectively saved about 15 million on that alone, because Cody Bellinger would have made, I think, almost about 30 million for this year had he stayed with the team. And Kyle Tucker made what I want to say about a little over 16 million with after the arbitration. So it's very frustrating. And again, it's like for bullpen that has already started to struggle, which we knew that has been an issue for this team for the better half of 2.5 years at this point. A lineup that, again, doesn't have like a ton of power outside of Kyle Tucker, and not a lot of protection, and also needs to stay incredibly healthy. It makes me wonder, like, are they saving bullets for the trade deadline to add, or is this really just Tom Ricketts just really like satisfied? Like, we're going to squeeze as much as we can out of this payroll to get the best that we can, and whatever happens, right? We're going to roll the dice as is.
Yeah, you're more than likely right. I've always had the thought that it doesn't really matter what happens on the field as long as people are still filing into Wrigley every day.
Yeah,
that's all that Tom Ricketts really cares about.
Yeah, and honestly, it's not going to change because I think Wrigley is such an attraction, and it's a tourist destination, and I hate saying this, but we are very, as Cubs fans, sometimes dumb, because we are incredibly passionate. We love our team to death. Both of us.
Well,
gone to games.
But especially me, with the amount of games that I go to and the convention.
Oh yeah,
all the
you definitely go to more
crap I do. Yeah,
you have gone to way more than I've gone to in the last couple of years, and I think I've kind of refused to go because of those reasons, because of Uncle Tom Ricketts, who just wants to continue to raise prices on hot dogs, beers, tickets, everything else that's going on around the ballpark.
They're $20 a month marquee subscriptions.
Oh, Jesus! Don't get me started on that trash. When he told us we'd be laughing, we'd all be laughing.
Right.
What did he say? What was his remarks?
It was at the Cubs convention like 2020, I want to say, and he was trying to introduce the marquee network, and the fans started booing. And he had this look like, why are you booing the Marquee Network? You won't be booing the Marquee Network in a year.
I can't, dude.
Christ.
I can't anymore.
Yeah.
I want to look up MLB payrolls by team for this year. I know obviously the Dodgers are.
I heard it on another podcast. I think the Cubs rank
330.
The Cubs rank 14th.
So this year, actually, they're ranked 6th in payroll.
The Cubs?
Yeah.
I thought it was much
6th
lower
in payroll.
That.
Which makes where is this money going to? It doesn't. It's like they don't have any real superstar on their team. I mean, I think like the Dodgers and Phillies are 1 and 2. That makes a lot of sense because I mean the Phillies have a ton of money invested in Kyle Schwarber, Nola, Bryce Harper,
Zach Wheeler. Yeah.
Zach Wheeler. They've got superstars on that team. The Mets are 3rd. They have superstars. Juan Soto, which.
Yep. Lindor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Toronto is 4th. The Cubs are actually ahead of the. Actually, you know what? I don't even think this is in order. Oh, this is active 28 man. If you look at total payroll, yeah, the Cubs are 12th. I'm sorry, the Cubs are actually 12th.
All good. So,
yeah, pretty rough for number 3 market in the country.
And I've heard this brought up from other fans before too. Like, if the payroll, I think most fans would be tolerant of what their payroll is right now if it actually reflected what the prices at the ballpark would be. If it was actually lower ticket prices and lower beer prices and everything else that we didn't have to pay for, fine. You know what? Do what you want. You got your 1 World Series ring. You want to just break even every year, whatever, fine. But don't make us have to pay the premium price for everything.
I would love to see if we could get a Dodgers fan who lives in LA on the podcast, because I know all their pricing for food and beers, I think they went up like 10 to 20%, I want to say, in costs. I'd love to hear if they're upset or not, because I don't know if I don't know if I would be that upset. Like if my team were basically spending the way that LA is right now, like would you be that pissed if your hot dogs were costing a couple bucks more?
No, absolutely not. Well, Listen, if I were a Dodgers fan right now, I would have no complaints at all. I'd be the defending World Series champion.
Yeah.
You're looking like the overwhelming favorite to win your division, to get back to another World Series, potentially win it, and like that, that well's not really going to be drying up anytime soon. So,
No.
yeah.
But here we are in Chicago, and Wrigley Field prices keep going up, and the payroll's going down, which is
You know
I
what the
guess that's
funniest
how they break even, right? I guess
exactly.
that's breaking even. Yeah.
You know what the funniest part about it too is, who the majority, I shouldn't say majority because I don't think he owns more than 50%, but the person who owns like the biggest piece of the pie for the Dodgers is this guy named Mark Walter. You know where Mark Walter
Mhm.
lives? He lives in Lincoln Park in Chicago. And he just as easily you know, like he has this residence here where you got two teams in this city that like don't spend as much as he does when, he is thousands of miles away spending on one of the most valuable franchises in sports.
Yeah, and the Cubs are, I think, fourth most valuable. I want to say at
Yeah.
4.6 billion, which
Yep.
were purchased at about 600 million. So he's made you know X amount of, what is it, 4.5 times, I think, on his investment at this point, or
Yeah.
something like that.
He bought him for I think 900 million, so not even a billion.
I think it was eight. It might have been
Like,
800
yeah.
million or something like that. But
Yep.
yeah, ridiculous. All right, well, we can bitch about Tom Ricketts, but let's jump into player A, player B. I know you had a couple for me that you wanted to go through. So I know two of them are active, and then two of them are career.
For sure. So, these two players, and because the season is so young, I decided to go with their 2024 stats. But yeah, both active players. Got this player who in 2024 played in 139 games, had 539 plate appearances, hit 259, a 354 on base, 383 slug, had a 737 OPS, hit 11 homers, 55 RBI, scored 59 runs, 35 extra base hits, had 119 total hits, 59 walks he drew, 95 times he struck out, only 2 stolen base attempts, was not successful in either one. A 117 WRC plus, meaning he was about 17% better than league average at the plate, and he was good for 1.5 baseball reference wins above replacement. Then you have player B, who in 130 games last season, there you go. 569 plate appearances. He hit 266. He hit a 325 on base, a 426 slug, a 751 OPS. He had 18 home runs. He drove in 78. He scored 72 times. 44 extra base hits, 137 hits total, drew 45 walks, 89 strikeouts, was 9 of 11 stolen base attempts, 109 WRC plus, and was good for 2.2 baseball reference wins above replacement. So between those two, who you starting, who you benching?
Tough. Obviously the WRC plus better from player A versus B. I'm assuming the higher WAR is due to probably better defense, if that's the case, because I mean, you're getting better offensive production technically from like an on-base standpoint from player A. Home runs obviously less, RBIs less, but extra base hits not too far off. Definitely love the walks. I mean, got on base more.
Yep.
Strikeouts about the same. Didn't steal as many bases. Oh, this is tough because I do like player B's ability to run the bags a little bit. I think like it's so close offensively. I mean, you're getting a little bit more power production from player B. And the higher WAR suggests to me that they're a better defensive player. You probably got more defensive runs saved from player B if that's the case. I'm going to go with player B because I do like the balance of defense and offense.
Okay. I think it would make sense that you like player B because he was traded away from the Cubs, and it's one that you've been complaining a lot about. That is Cody Bellinger. Active player A is current Cub Justin Turner last season.
Okay.
Who you were right about, the defense playing a big part in it because he did not play the field all that much.
Nope.
Was mostly a DH in Toronto and Seattle last season. But slightly better at the plate for Turner. You know, was playing at a little bit more of a pitcher-friendly park in Seattle last season, whereas, now Cody Bellinger moves on to, like, probably the best hitter-friendly park for left-handed hitters in Yankee
for him, for
Stadium.
sure.
So, it's one where, obviously I think you definitely prefer Cody Bellinger to Justin Turner, but the drop-off between their stats in 2024, not all that much.
Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing. I would have loved for the Cubs to keep Cody Bellinger in this lineup. With Kyle Tucker, I was kind of hoping that, if they traded Cody Bellinger, I was a fan of trading Cody to save that salary.
Right.
If they were actually going to use that money towards Alex Bregman, which they didn't. And then they never used it for anything after that. So I'm not super happy about the Cody Bellinger trade as stands. I was happy in the moment because I did think that it was going to lead to signing somebody else and adding to the lineup. But
or that money could have potentially been reinvested into like a Tucker extension or something like that.
Sure, yeah. Right, exactly. But it was basically just, it's lining Ricketts' wallet again. So
right.
But yeah, I mean, I would still pick Cody Bellinger over Justin Turner, even not knowing the stats. Like, younger, better defensive player. I think had a higher offensive upside considering that, they can play a little bit more. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Justin Turner, I should say, turns out to be. I still think that he's going to be, I think he's going to end up like, what did I say? Eric Hosmer. I think he's going to be like an Eric Hosmer type guy. Like he'll make it to about mid-year and then he's going to be a cut casualty or designated for assignment by mid-year. So I don't think he makes it the full 2025 season.
For a guy who's had a pretty damn good OBP over the course of his career, I think he'll be a little bit more useful than Eric Hosmer was, but we'll see.
Okay. We'll see. All right, let's do the career A and B.
All right, career player A and B. Normally the way we go about this is 162 game averages, but I actually just went with a certain sample size for both these players. I think you could it'll become obvious what it is this sample is for them. So career player A in 129 games, 540 plate appearances, has 267 batting average, 352 on base, 541 slug, 893 OPS, got 35 home runs, 90 RBI, 74 runs scored, 55 extra base hits, 125 total hits, 55 walks drawn, and 136 strikeouts. Then we move on to player B, and in the same sample, 139 games played, 580 plate appearances, 242 average, a 379 on base, a 559 slug, a 939 OPS, 43 home runs, 75 RBIs, 86 runs scored, 63 extra base hits, 114 total hits, 104 walks, and 173 strikeouts.
I mean, this feels pretty easy just considering that, player B played more games, 10 more games than player A. I do love, you know me, man, I'm a non-base guy. The 379 is, obviously drew more walks, more home runs, less RBIs, which, I think you and I have talked about is, direct representation of who bats in front of you as well.
Right.
More extra base hits from player B. I'm going to go with player B. I feel like this, I know he strikes out more, but has also got on base more.
So this is relevant to the previous series. Player B is Adam Dunn in his career against the Cubs.
Wow.
Former Red. And then player A is another Red who kills the Cubs, or former
Eugenio Suarez.
Eugenio Suarez in his career against the Cubs.
Eugenio Suarez.
I love the way that Pat Hughes always pronounces his name too. That's even though that name gives me PTSD, but
Wilson Contreras.
Wilson Contreras, exactly. I will say too, player B, that being Adam Dunn, I mean, just look at the 104 walks and the 173 strikeouts and the 43 home runs. That is like the most typical season slash line you could probably expect from Adam Dunn, because he
Yeah.
was like the poster child of the 3 true outcome ball
Yeah.
player.
Yep. I remember going to a game. I had a Cubs MasterCard at the time, and I got free tickets through having the MasterCard, which got me
Nice.
right field bleacher seats in the actual seated area, not the, like actual seats in the bleachers,
Like
not like the
in the
actual.
corner by like where the video
Yeah.
board is now, right? Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
So I got to go to the game early, and they were playing the Reds, and got free food, going to the game. But I do remember watching a home run that Adam Dunn hit right over my head into out of the ballpark. I watched it literally go right over me into the streets, where I mean, I would just, I was like, that's typical Adam Dunn. Just it's gonna go up there. He was gonna
Of
hit,
course.
probably 2-3 blocks down from Wrigley, just hitting bombs. But yeah, that was it was a good, well, not a good memory, but Cubs killer.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, I know you got an on this day.
I do
So
have an on this date. This was probably one of the more memorable Cubs home openers on this date. It featured a statue getting unveiled, and it featured the debut of a pretty exciting, Cubs free agent signing. Ernie Banks got his statue unveiled in 2008 on opening day against the Brewers. And then in this game,
ooh,
fresh new free agent signing Kosuke
I know this
Fukudome,
hit
who
a home run.
who was actually featured in the
Yep.
opening game in Japan throughout the first pitch of that game.
Yep.
Yeah, went 3 for 3, had the game tying home run in the 9th inning, and
Mm-hmm.
he hit that home run off of a former Cy Young Award winner from this same decade. I need to know from you. Do you know who that pitcher is?
Ooh,
He was their closer
that's
at
a
that time.
ah he Cy Young winner from
Mm-hmm.
that decade.
Yep.
Oh man, I am drawing a blank here. I thought it was Eric Gagne, but I guess Eric Gagne did win a Cy Young as a closer, didn't he? Didn't he go like 50 for 50 and won a Cy Young?
Mm-hmm.
Was it Eric Gagne?
It was Eric Gagne.
Okay.
Great guess.
Okay. I could have sworn. I'm trying to think, like, you almost had me too, because I'm thinking, like, was it a starter that converted to a closer for
Right,
Milwaukee?
right.
Because I
Yeah.
mean, not many closers actually win they win the Cy
He
Young.
he may
He
have
might have
been
been
the
the only one,
last.
right?
He may have been the last to do it. No,
Was
there
Sutcliffe or not? Was
uh th-
it? Did Sonny
there
win one
well, Sutcliffe as a starter in '84
as a
did win
starter,
one.
but not as a closer?
If you go back and look at like damn near everyone who won one in the '80s,
Mhm.
the vast majority of them were closers. I want to say the year that Sut won it for the Cubs in '84, in the AL, it was like the Tigers closer, Willie Hernandez, who won it, and like Dennis Eckersley had one, and a couple other guys, but like that was like the era where like everyone was in love with giving the major awards to closers.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, you almost threw me off, because I'm like, shit, well, who could have converted from starter to closer? But I did remember that did he go 50 for 50 or 52 for 52 or something like that,
Let
right?
me pull up what he did in '03.
He did something wild where, I mean, he just I mean,
It, it,
obviously it
I
was
I think
PEDs
he's
and stuff like that. But,
exactly, yeah. This was post steroids, Eric Gagne too. So like
yeah.
probably not his best performance. This year he would go on to have a 5.44 ERA. Yikes. But no, in '03, shoot, it doesn't show on Baseball Reference like if he blew any saves, but he led the league in saves with 55. He led the league in games finished with 67, had a 1.20 ERA. You know what? You may be right about him not blowing a
He
save that
converted
year.
he converted all 55 save opportunities.
There you go. I want to say there was maybe a stretch from either '02 and '03 or '03 and '04 where he had like I think it was 84 consecutive save opportunities that he converted.
Yep.
So yeah. Yep. Eric Gagne.
Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's wrap up here. We got flying the W's and taking the L's.
All right.
Hello, you play to win the game.
Addison is next. Doors open on the left at Addison.
I say one thing. Go. Let's go. That's a W. That's E1. That's E1. That's a W.
Is a L7 winning.
All right, so I've got my L here. One, I think it's a couple. I mean, it's an L that, like, I know the Cubs have to start on the road. You know, I know that obviously these cool temperature days. I mean, our weather here has been absolutely insane, going back and forth between 70 and 40 degrees.
Oh God, yeah.
They're playing out in West Sacramento. Yeah, I think that's where they're playing, right? And that's where the Athletic A's, the
Athletics, yeah.
The Athletics. I don't even know what to call them.
The Athletic Athletics. That's a great name.
Yeah, so they're out in West Sacramento. You know, obviously, just bad baseball, bad organization, bad owner. I think probably one of the few owners that I would probably bitch at more than Tom Ricketts.
Yeah.
So
probably the only one worse than Jerry Reinsdorf at this point.
Yeah. So L for the fans, and of the A's, Oakland, Sacramento, whatever you want to call them at this point.
For sure.
L for them for having to deal with this season, with Oakland, or with the A's figuring out where they're playing right now. And also just that us having to watch bad, A's baseball, but also kind of a mini W that we don't have to listen to Jenny Kavnar. I think we get the win for not having to listen to that.
She is so rough. I actually just had a talk with a buddy about that whole call that she had last year where, like, what was it? There was some like walk-off home run she had for the A's where, like, she'd seen like confused by the whole thing.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal. I mean, just honestly, like, man, I'd hate to see Taylor McGregor leave, but it's like, I feel like that dude, she can go there and just absolutely destroy it. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, there's so many other, like, if you want to highlight women and stuff like that, for sure. Like, I'm all for that.
For sure.
There's so many women that do such a better job than her. It's bad. It's bad. She is really bad.
Speaking of which, do you remember?
And there are a lot of dudes out there that are bad too. So don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not trying to single her out, but I'm just we're on the topic of the A's, and
look no further than the guy who calls the fifth inning of Cubs games on radio. So
God, yeah. He's
who will remain nameless.
During Pat Hughes piss breaks, is that like
Pat Hughes piss breaks, there you go. Just to bring up you're talking good women in sports. Randomly flipping through the radio, listening to like some of the college basketball tournament games, and one of the games that I was kind of paid attention to because I had some money on it. It was being called by two former Chicago broadcasters that I think we both kind of can appreciate. It was Jason Benetti on play-by-play. Do you remember Sarah Kustok, who used to be with Comcast Sportsnet? Was, I think,
rings a bell.
She would always be like during Blackhawks games, like would interview the first player, the guy who got the first star of the game. Yep. That was really excellent in that too. So if you're flipping through and happening,
I think I mean, and listen, there are a ton of women in sports that are, in sports broadcasting that are really good. I think like Elise Menaker does a really great job.
Absolutely.
I think Melanie Newman, is it Melanie Newman who does the Baltimore Orioles games? I mean, she's really good.
Yep.
Phenomenal. But man, that Jenny Kavnar or whatever, that's a rough listen for anybody, man or woman, just not great. Yeah. So anyway, who do you got for your L? And then we can jump into W's.
I unfortunately only have L's, don't have a W. My first L is going to go to someone who is kind of a little bit of an influence for me being a sports podcaster. And, if you grew up in Chicago during the 90s and 2000s and listened to Sports Talk Radio quite a bit. It's a familiar name to you, but Big L going to Dan Bernstein.
Oh, that was going to be my win.
Oh, your win. Shoot.
That was going to be my win, is we don't have to listen to Dan Bernstein anymore. That dude is so insufferable. Honestly, like,
these days, I will agree. I do think during his prime with him and Boers together, I thought it was great radio.
What a pompous, arrogant piece of shit.
Yes.
When you have Lawrence Holmes, who is questionably from what you hear, and again, I don't know Lawrence Holmes personally, but from everything you read and hear, everyone says he's like one of the nicest guys in sports. And when you have Lawrence Holmes who can't actively work with that person, what kind of piece of shit do you have to be?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad you called it I'm glad you called that out, because that was actually going to be one of my W's. Is we don't have
670
to
The Score listeners.
Yeah, and it's honestly like I don't listen to 670 The Score that much either, because I just don't like the radio personalities on them. I liked Goff, before he left.
I really like Goff too.
I loved Lawrence Holmes before he moved on because of Bernstein.
He's still at the Score. He just hosts at a different time now than him. But actually he does a pretty good show. Him and Matt Spiegel together. But
even Spiegel's fine. But I mean, with Boers and Bernstein was probably one of my least favorite shows, like in the history of sports radio. I think like them together was so brutal. So when Boers retired or left or whatever he did, I was pretty ecstatic and thinking that Bernstein was maybe influenced by that, but no, he's just kind of a turd. So I think Bernstein leaving is Jesus. He long overdue. He should have been out of there years ago.
Probably. I will always appreciate him just because I first started listening to him maybe in 2009, 2010, 2011, that area. Before the Score got affiliated with the Cubs, when they were still a White Sox station, and all the stations that would talk, I guess when it would be Sports Central on WGN would be the Cubs alternative, because they're affiliated with the Cubs, they couldn't really talk very honestly about the Cubs. When guys like Boers and Bernstein would talk about the Cubs, because there was no direct affiliation, they could actually say what their honest opinion was and how bad of a job Jim Hendry was doing towards the end of his time there. And so, I'll appreciate him for that. And I'll appreciate him he was probably one of the first guys in sports talk radio to really stress the importance of the advanced statistics in baseball as well too. He did make a real big push to talk WAR and WRC plus and all that too. So
but I also think it was a way for him to show everybody how much smarter he thought he was than everyone else.
Correct. Which, he has no shortage of doing that.
Yeah. So behind him, I think one of the most insufferable people on sports radio was him. Behind him, I would say Fred Hubner was up there.
I haven't heard much of Fred Hubner. I've heard him do updates in between, but never his actual content.
Was definitely on the Score for a long time and then went to ESPN. Sox fan. He'd get off my lawn kind of guy, just, the old school baseball fan, so those two. But I'm an ESPN 1000 guy anyway, so it's not like it even affects me that much. I mean, I'm a, my favorite show, my two favorite shows, Carmen and Yurko, love those guys.
Okay. Yep.
Carmen is definitely a great follow as well too. He's a fellow whiskey aficionado.
I've seen some of your stuff. You and him interacting on that. But
yeah, dude, he's good people. He's a good dude. And honestly, I think he's always been. So I grew up, when I grew up listening to sports radio, one of the first shows that I really got into was when Carmen was with Mark Silverman on ESPN 1000.
Okay,
it was the Carmen Sylvie show. And then it was Mac Yurko and Harry. I loved that show back then.
Oh, yeah.
Before Harry Tynowitz got excused out for some of his stuff. And then it was Mac Yurko and Carm. And then it was Carm and Yurko. And then,
right.
Waddle and Sylvie are, the other show that I listened to. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to steal your
no worries.
L's,
all good.
Go ahead, continue. You got any L's?
All right, my other L, and I hate to go down this route because this team has actually gotten off to a better start than we would imagine. But in a picture I texted you yesterday during a rain delay for the White Sox, he had a little trouble putting down the tarp to keep the field dry. So L goes to Roger Bossard and the much vaunted Chicago White Sox grounds crew for the job they did yesterday.
Yeah, Sod Father would be disappointed. Yeah, that was rough. But the good thing is for Sox fans is they have no nationally televised games this year. They're one of 2 teams in all of baseball that will not be on national TV. So only Chicago fans saw it, if they did. So
right. And it made its way across Twitter pretty well. But yeah.
You got any W's? I know I got one that
I unfortunately no W's at this
no
point.
W's. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
The only other W that I had here, and I think is going to bring us into this topic. I'm going to give a W to the New York Yankees because they introduced a new bat that obviously was introduced over. Well, I wouldn't want to say introduced over the weekend because I think there are a couple teams that had been using them. But they did add, I think it was like 4 or 5 of their guys were starting to use these new torpedo bats. They had a 20-9 game against the Brewers over the weekend, so thank you for that. Where they hit 9 home runs in that game, and I want to say 4 of the 5 guys that hit home runs in that game were using the torpedo bats, if I'm not mistaken. I think Aaron Judge had 3 home runs in that game, did not use the torpedo bat, but what are your thoughts? I mean, are you a fan of this bat? Do you think this is something that the rest of baseball should start to look at? Because pretty cool background story. I mean, they had a MIT graduate who works for the Yankees organization, who basically, within the rules and regulations of the bat code for Major League Baseball, fits the code, does not violate any rules, is not illegal, not breaking anything, but created this very kind of like torpedo looking bat where the barrel starts to get fatter and then thin out at the edge of the bat and towards the handle. But we've seen some pretty good power numbers, and it's supposed to help players barrel up the ball a little bit easier, make better contact, hit the ball harder. I don't think there's really difference in weight or anything like that, but
no, I love them. They're
cool.
A little silly looking. They kind of look like they're holding up like bowling pins and swinging those, but
weird wiffle ball bat.
The thing is that baseball, since its inception has always kind of been a sport of like kind of bending the rules a little bit, and I wonder if there's going to be any sort of, repercussions to come from this, from teams complaining that it goes, it's Bush League, it goes against the spirit of the game. That those people will be out there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's like the tush push people in the NFL right now.
For sure. I think that it's great, and it's going to help create a lot more offense, which, that's where the action is. That's, that's what gets this game back to being an exciting game instead of, having it be all strikeouts and walks all the time. So I love the bats, and as it pertains to the Cubs, I want to say maybe 1 or 2 guys do use them. Maybe they haven't really been featured all that much on the broadcast or being a talking point. But it is something that, we complain a lot about how cheap Ricketts is and everything like that. The one thing that you can say about the Cubs is that, like, they don't really cheap out when it comes to like player resources, I guess you could say. So like, I could see it if some of the Cubs players wanted to get in on this, that they wouldn't be held back by it.
I honestly don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, if it's within the rules and it's within the regulations of the bat sizes that are needed, to fit the rules of baseball, I love it. Cause I mean, strikeouts have been up the last, every year for the last, few years. I think pitchers stuff is getting nastier and nastier. Spin rate is obviously a big focus, amongst pitchers now. And you've got a lot of teams like the Cubs that have a pitch lab that help develop spin rate, make it harder to hit these guys.
Right.
I think if it helps offset some of that, I'm for it. Creates a little bit more offense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Cody Bellinger is benefiting from this bat so far. I mean, he's hitting 400 to start the year so far. Hit a home run. He's got 6 RBIs already to start the year. And again, we talked about that short porch in New York. I mean, he did this in Milwaukee. So, yeah. I mean,
those games were in New York. It was just against the Brewers, but yes.
Oh, were they in New York? I thought they were.
They were in New York. Nope.
Okay. Well, either way, I mean, off to a great start for Cody. But yeah, I mean, I'm for it. I don't think it's bad for the game.
No, not at all.
All right, let's wrap up here. We've got the upcoming schedule here. You got 3 against the Athletics, and then you've got. Hopefully, we can reconvene on Monday when they play the Rangers, but they'll have 3 against the Padres over the weekend. And I'm gonna assume that you will be there on Friday for opening day.
I am there. Got my tickets already. Me and Tony, who was in the comments earlier, we're going. Got a bunch of friends out. Yep. Got a bunch of friends out in the left field bleachers we're meeting up with, so looking very much forward to it. But as for this series against the A's, so you got Ben Brown against who is Estes? Joey Estes of the A's. Last season had a 5.01 ERA, 24 starts, 127 strikeouts. Ben Brown, this is going to be his first start of the year, and I'm noticing a trend with Ben Brown. He came in relief of Shota Imanaga in the opening Tokyo game, and just like last season, he came into like a little bit of a sloppy game and got rocked a little bit, and then for the remainder of his time as a Cub, like was lights out all of last year. Hopefully a trend that continues. So
you know me, I'm a big Ben Brown guy. I think this is the guy that. This is one of the guys that I think with him and Kay Horton, I'm hoping are like your one. I'm hoping they are the Mark Pryor, Kerry Wood combo for the next few years, right? Like top of the order power stuff guys. So
yeah, hopefully will be the case soon enough. Rotation does turn over back to Imanaga and Steele after that, or actually would it be Steele and Tyone? Because Imanaga,
I think it was Tyone on Friday. Right. And then it was Boyd on yesterday, but there's also a day off Thursday. So they may skip somebody early on because I think they usually do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're going to skip somebody. I think they'll probably skip like Boyd or Brown again, but I don't know. I don't know who the match.
But there wasn't an off day since with this first turn through the rotation. I would imagine maybe they keep it as is and then skip someone after the off day.
It's Steele on Tuesday, and it will be Tyone on Wednesday.
Do we know who's projected to go for the A's?
So Ben Brown, Steele, Tyone. Those are the probables. And there's nothing for Friday as of right now. So I would assume that it'd be Imanaga on Friday.
You know what? That's right. I remember when they set up the rotation the way that they did when the Tokyo series was announced. It was officially announced that like Shota would start the opening game there, then also start the home opener for the Cubs. So there you go. All right. With that in mind,
so 6 games. What do you got?
I think I'm going to go 2 out of 3 against Oakland. They probably drop that last one that Tyone starts. And then I'll say 2 out of 3 against the Padres with the rotation turning back over to Imanaga and Boyd and Brown. I don't know exactly what the situation is with the Padres rotation. If it's hopefully, can dodge one of Cease or King. If you can dodge one of them at least, feel good about them facing the Padres. A team from a warm weather city this early in the year having to come to Chicago isn't always the best recipe for them. So I'm going 2 out of 3 both series.
Okay. I am going to say they're going to sweep Oakland. They're going to sweep the Athletics.
They might as well be Oakland.
I think Tyon bounces back, and I think you get a strong performance. I think Steele bounces back. I think Tyon bounces back. I'm hoping Brown has a good game because, like I said, I'm a big Ben Brown fan. So I think they should sweep the Athletics. And I do think they take 2 out of 3 out of San Diego over the weekend.
Wow. Look at you being more optimistic than me.
I'm going to say they're going to go 5-2 because they got to get back over 500 here to start off, to start off April. So
for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to say that. So hopefully you don't get stuck by rain. It's supposed to rain all weekend. So hopefully you dodge some of that weather. It's not looking too great right now. It looks like I was looking at it today. It looks like there's a 50% chance on Friday, 85% chance on Saturday, and a 65% chance on Sunday.
All right.
Looks like the rain will be 4:00 in the afternoon on Friday and beyond into the evening. Saturday looks like it's going to rain pretty much all day, kind of scattered. And Sunday looks like it's going to rain and kind of dissipate around like noon. So maybe it won't rain that much on Sunday, but
if it starts at 4:00 on Friday, by then, you'll probably have about 7 or 8 innings complete by that point. I can stick it out through then. That's no big deal.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe might have the top come off that game as, I did in an April game last year when it was raining.
Yep. The sun's away, but the nips are still out. Love it.
Exactly.
A little bit of this. Yeah.
A little bit of that.
Right there.
Exactly. Just like that. Yep.
Oh, in April. Gotta love Chicago fans. Well, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm gonna see actually Sunday. I'm gonna wait till Sunday to see if tickets drop, but I might actually be going to my second Blackhawks game of the year.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Because they are playing the Pittsburgh Penguins, which are my wife's favorite team. So
there you go. Nice.
Yeah, we might take my daughter to her first hockey game.
Awesome.
So we'll see. We'll see how tickets, if they come down or not. Because right now they're still kind of pricey, and I don't understand why. Because the Blackhawks are garbage, and Penguins are not looking that much better. So.
Well, maybe weather clears up a little bit. People have a little more interest in going to Wrigley that day than going to the United Center. Maybe that drops some prices. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think that's their second to last home game of the year, and it may be the last one on a weekend. So that could be the reason for the high ticket price. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully we can reconvene on Monday, and hopefully the Cubs go 5-2 like I've projected. And we have some good things to talk about. And maybe the bullpen pulls it together, and maybe it's not a continuing discussion. That would be great.
That would be.
But thanks everyone for joining. We appreciate you, and have a good rest of your week,
Thank you,
Mike.
everyone. Yeah, you as well. Go Cubs.
All right. Let's fly that W.
Fly the W.